This is another one of our CEO C-suite cybersecurity interview podcasts. Full disclosure, this is Conceal.io, and this is Gordon Lawson, who is the CEO of Conceal. We use this product at Titanium. I really think that this is a critical piece of your cybersecurity stack, no matter how you're putting your stack together, because this is an element that a lot of people just overlook all the time. There's actually, before the Hack the Box website came out, there used to be a Hack the Box challenge where they would send laptops out. And the way that they would almost always get into those laptops was compromising the browser, even though they were completely locked down. And they would compromise that browser by making the browser go to illicit web pages. So just using that as kind of the platform to go on to compromise all sorts of machines intentionally locked down by cybersecurity professionals. That's why I feel really strongly. And I invited Gordon on the show. He's a 20-year experienced person in the Navy. He did 6 years active and over a dozen years reservist. He's been in the cybersecurity space for well over a decade. And I am very happy to have him on. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Richard. Pleasure to be with you.
It is a wonderful, glorious day in Texas at 106-degree heat. Hopefully it's not going to get too bad where you're at.
We're actually, funny you mentioned that, we're in Augusta, Georgia, which I love to tell folks, second largest concentration of government cyber in the country outside of DC. As you know, you haven't worked with DoD, you know that. And we're the first fully commercial international cyber company to be headquartered here. So it's not 106, it's going to be about 85 today. And this is just it's a wonderful community, and we're excited to continue to grow cyber in this community.
The number of stories that I have of going through Fort Benning to deploy out to Iraq and Afghanistan, oh man, those are some tales. Yeah. Conceal.io, it's kind of like when I describe it to, customers that I'm trying to explain products to, like people who own construction companies or they own a medical clinic, I gotta say, hey, Conceal.io is like antivirus for your browser. Do you feel that that's kind of a good layman explanation? And how would you add on to that?
I almost like the term, I try and avoid the technical terms. I like to say an insurance policy for your employees. And the only reason I say that is, most companies now have security awareness. That's where I started my career with a security awareness company in cyber. The phishing emails are super effective at training people, but they're not foolproof. And threat actors are getting smarter and smarter about how the vectors they use to get people to click on stuff and enter credentials. So that's why I like this human insurance policy, maybe sitting between security awareness and EDR, that ability to provide telemetry to firms like yours about when someone's going to something that could be a real problem. But I don't, I think that everyone has some different interpretations about how they describe it. Fundamentally, I think that browser security is going to be like EDR in the future, like security awareness in the future. It's going to be required by cyber insurance because, as you and I know, it's 95% of these attacks are coming through that, and they're just getting harder and harder to detect.
My phish rate up until still this day is 100%. So it's really, it's like you said, especially with the advent of AI, yep. We used to train people, hey, look for the misspelled words, look for the weird English language, look for that. With AI, that's all gone.
That's right.
You've got these flawless emails that are coming at you, and people are clicking the links. No matter what you tell them not to do. I don't know what we had a customer the other day that they didn't have an event because we had products in place, but they're like, they went to go get into a meeting, and the meeting's like, oh, here's your calendar event invite. And they sent them a link, which was spoofed as an ICS file. And they just downloaded it and tried to run it. So no matter how much you train people, you need to create training, create documentation, SOP policy procedure, and then have a technical control in place to actually secure it and lock it down.
That's so right. And the balance is a technical control that doesn't stop people from getting their job done. or doesn't impede workflow or cause the network to work really slowly. And I think that's the balance that we strive for every day is, work has to go on, but there's no vendor that's going to detect all of these things. But that's why this concept of, hey, if it doesn't look right, we're going to put it in a place where it can affect the endpoint or the network, and we're going to make sure that we're alerting on that very quickly.
It's, well, like you said, we're never going to be at 100%, right? If somebody writes something tonight, right, I can attack endpoints. Maybe I've got so in-house we've got Threat Locker on a bunch of devices, right? So that's going to help against 0 days and help against other stuff. But I can't run Threat Locker on the printer. I can't run Threat Locker on the firewall, right? I have to manage every single layer of that cybersecurity onion, so to speak, differently,
right?
And it's a real confusion for a lot of organizations. And in the last couple of years, things are starting to change, right? Last year it was $12 billion that the FBI was personally involved with cybercrime damage. The year before was 6. The year before that was 3. Are you starting to see companies actually starting to come to light and say, hey, we need to start taking this stuff seriously?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we're on track to 1,000 customers this year, right? So we are adding companies. I mean, I think that speaks to the efficacy of what folks are seeing. But I do believe that no matter whether you're a large organization or small organization, this is the threat actors are preying on the psychology. We talked about that big casino hack last year, right? I mean, that's somewhat that is social engineering over the phone, getting passwords. That's not going to be, very few tools could have prevented that. But we know that folks are going to play into this, that they're going to play into employees' fear. They're going to use AI to have incredible open source intelligence and be able to target folks very explicitly. And so I don't think it's getting any better. And then, throw the recent EDR issues on top of this, where there seems to be a dependent on maybe one vendor to solve all my problems. Just it's a fallacy, right? And so this is a holistic approach. Most importantly, companies need firms like yours to be able to give them great advice, to provide that holistic approach, to say, hey, I see this across multiple companies. I know when things are not looking right, and I'm going to give you that consultative advice to say, we can secure you more effectively. And I think anytime you get companies where it's like, maybe there's a lack of experience, or they think that one or two tools have them secured, you and I know that's just doesn't work. It's the service coupled with the technology and the process that really can transform a company's protective layers.
Yeah, my father was a locksmith, so I came at security from a physical procedure in the start, and then cybersecurity as I grew up. I grew up in Endicott, New York, which is the birthplace of IBM, arguably the birthplace of cybersecurity, maybe. And that became kind of the focal point of everything. I don't care how fancy your firewall is. I don't care how great your VLAN segregation is. The most powerful cybersecurity weapon is a rock that might be able to break your back door, and I can walk in and pick your server up and take it with me, right? Like, have you done all of the due diligence, and are you actually taking care of the really common factors? And like you said earlier, 95% of attacks are coming through email, and you got to have something for when people are clicking on that link. It becomes a conversation, while at the same time, companies are like, hey, how do I get my marketing emails in front of people so they click on links, so they come buy my product? I'm like, oh, well, it's going to get harder. You got to set up your DKIM and your SPF and your DMARC, and you have all those things in play, but you don't know what they have on the other side. Maybe they're a bank and they don't allow links. Maybe they've got some extra sauce or some extra security features that it really kind of brings home that one solution isn't going to be your savior, and you have to have more. On that, leaping off that, what would you say, in your opinion? I know maybe you're poking at another industry. What would you consider as a weak spot that you see in people's cybersecurity stacks that are adding Conceal, but they could say, hey, what are you doing for this? What are you doing for that? And they're just like,
one of the things, and maybe this is also a factor of, we do quite a bit of international business now, is I'm always astounded at the amount of companies that don't have any EDR. Right. So I do think maybe you're not as much as I am, but I see it a lot. And I do think that, from my perspective, Conceal partnered with, one of those great vendors that are out there. That's an essential piece. Right. So I think I would say that is one, that's probably the most important one. And then I would also go back to not necessarily a tool, but the amount of companies that don't have either a managed service provider or an MSSP or someone that can also do some pen testing for them, because they'll see something that looks like a compromise, but then they're not doing any IR on what happened there. And I think that is another just a gap that we see. And we'll recommend folks to people and say, hey, you need to look at this and make sure that it wasn't something more systemic in terms of a breach of your network.
We just put a video out on incident response plans on the channel, and we run into this a lot with customers. They're like, oh, I had this pop up. I've never seen this pop up before, but yeah, I didn't make a ticket. I just closed it or slid it to the side or just totally ignored it. To some people, hey, this is a really big deal. I had a pop up and it's an apparent, oh, there's a bunch of, foreign characters on the screen and I should do something about that. But sometimes it's like, oh, hey, why do I have a pop up talking about McAfee antivirus? I don't use McAfee antivirus. Why do I have these things? It becomes very clear that, like you said, a lot of organizations don't have another person to kind of bring this stuff to, especially in the pen testing cybersecurity arena.
Right.
We had a company here locally that we were doing incident response for and kind of triage. They got ransomware, they got hacked, they didn't know what to do. They had 2 internal IT people and they're just like, we have no skill set here for this at all. We don't even know how to start a playbook on securing ourselves. And then we find out that they're like running the worst antivirus on the planet. Nothing's geo-locked. There's nothing fenced, nothing segregate. Like, it's just, it can get bad because people don't know what they don't know. Which is why you and I are here, frankly, trying to make people more aware of what they should. On the subject of browsers and your product, what's your favorite browser? If you were going to say, hey, I like this one, this is my go-to.
I'm a Chrome guy. I just feel like it's pretty easy to work with. I love that, if you're a Mac user, it's quite easy you don't have to use Safari. You can use Chrome on there. And I think that from a policy perspective, companies can mandate that as well. And I think the other piece that just kind of how Conceal approaches this ecosystem is we work with all the browsers. We're not trying to replace a browser. We're not trying to mandate folks, use just one. And I think that makes it easier, especially for smaller businesses that, don't want to have onerous requirements on their employees. We're very, very, very flexible with that. But I do like what Google's doing. We like what Microsoft's doing. We want to make sure that we're adding to whatever security layers they have. And I also think that those companies, especially Google, tends to be more consumer focused on. So they're going to be a little bit more permissive about what they might allow, even in a corporate environment. That's why it's important to have an extension like Conceal, where let's do another scan here. We're not going to do major latency at all. Let's do another scan and make sure this is really something that you should be going to. And if it's suspicious, as you know how our technology works, if there is that credit theft page, once that goes to isolation, we want that keyboard disabled. We don't want users giving up those creds. That's a functionality that the big browsers don't have, and we feel like that's nice synergy with our approach.
I totally agree. I run Conceal on my personal browsers. I want to make sure that, hey, for my podcasting, for my Zooms, for my Google Meets, it's a completely isolated device so that I can click on links that people are tossing me in chat, and I can be a little bit more or less paranoid in that case, because I know the kind of threats that are out there. I build some of those threats. So doing pen testing or doing engagements. So you've been in the cybersecurity space for a long time. would be some of your advice to people who are listening? So we've got two customer bases. We've got our customer base who are businesses that, Titanium is marketing to and wanting to get as customers. But we've got a lot of people that are watching us that are like, hey, I want to become you. I want to become a hacker. I want to become a cybersecurity professional. Maybe I want to develop some cybersecurity products. How did you get started? What was your, like, the spark for you in cybersecurity? And what would you tell someone if they were saying to follow your footsteps?
Well,
Start here.
First off, I'm not a practitioner. So, I've obviously been around technology. I went to Naval Academy. I was a naval officer. I was on a ship for 3 years, right after 9/11, anti-submarine officer, navigator. So been around technology. But this is about, I guess, 2013-ish. I was actually on a flight to the UK. I sat next to the founder of a security awareness company. And he said, you've dealt with technology, you're doing more physical security work now, you really need to look at cyber. And so bottom line, became head of global sales for that company. We had a nice outcome. We grew, to 2,000 customers. And so for me, that was not only learning the technology, but learning the importance of the go-to-market. And I think as you've probably seen with folks in this industry, you can have a great product, but the go-to-market is critical too. And so that's something that I had the pleasure and the honor of being able to do that for that company and learn it. And really we apply all those principles at Conceal. One thing I would say is we're recruiting a lot of recent college graduates here in our Augusta office. Some of them may have a computer science degree. Some of them may have a marketing degree. I would encourage folks that you don't always necessarily have to be hands-on. It's great. You have to understand the technology, but articulating the value of the technology is a critical component of the industry too. And so, you can get into this as a solutions engineer, as inside salesperson, as a customer success specialist. All of these roles are critical. And when you get into cyber and do that, you really have, I think, unlimited employment opportunities for the future.
That's a great answer. A buddy of mine many years ago asked me, he's like, hey man, I want to get into hacking. I want to get into cybersecurity. And I was like, don't you have some sales experience? He's like, yeah, I got sales experience. I'm like, then just find a cybersecurity company that's selling products and they want to have you on sales team and go work there. Then learn the ins and outs of the product. You're going to move up naturally because you're learning those, then migrate to another company, go sales, learn their product, migrate to another company, do sales, learn their product. And before you know it, you'll be a cybersecurity expert, not realizing it while you're also making money while you're also doing sales. So it's totally, and he's right now the head of the red team, purple team at SAIC. So
that's amazing.
He's certainly followed that path and really walked up the ladder. He's actually in red Tribe of Hackers and Red Team Tribe of Hackers.
Okay.
He's been featured in a lot of books. He's former government now at this point also.
One of the cool things that as I talk to folks, we recruit people here, is I say, the world is our addressable market. Obviously there's countries we can't sell into and all those compliance pieces, but every company in the world needs this. So you can't, folks, as you're running a business, folks say no. More folks say no than say yes, but you have to stay resilient and really continue to market effectively, create value with your customers. And that's what's so exciting about this. There's very, very few industries where you can really say that everyone needs it. And that's just, I think it kind of keeps you, it certainly keeps me motivated.
Pivoting off of that right away, what would you say? Like, I'm sure that Conceal has a success story or two that they hold up and talk about in particular when they're trying to get customers to look at the product. What's one that kind of comes to mind that you're like, that you guys talk around the office, or you say, hey, go tell them about this story, about this IT company, this MSP?
There's one I'll mention, one MSP. Actually, he did a public, there's a video that's on LinkedIn. I think it was reposted just this week again about it, stopping nation state ransomware. He saw it, stopped it, talked about the vectors on it, and it was a phishing link, and he got alerted on it and was able to remediate that very quickly. I think that's one. There's been, at this point, Richard, hundreds of cases of stock credential theft, and I think for us, these are 5,000 endpoint companies, 50 endpoint companies across the spectrum here where we've seen that, and it was missed by all other security controls. Who knows what the after effects could have been with that. But I think what we're really trying to do is, that our telemetry is based on isolations. That's when we see something suspicious, we alert on it as quickly as possible. We're doing analysis on those isolations for our customers, and we see this weekly where we're stopping pretty nefarious threats from getting through, and and then we release threat reports about it every week as well. We anonymize it and release a threat report so we can share those findings with our client base.
APTs are everywhere, and they're not necessarily nation state, but there are certainly nation state teams that are APTs. Kind of like a pigeon and a bird, right? One's a bird, the other's is a bird, but also a pigeon.
Yeah.
And when we think about how people are doing those things, all it takes is one good compromise to then get through the filter, right? I compromise a well-established business, whether it's a supply chain attack or something else that I'm going to then fish from, now that I've got this foothold into a well-established, well-known company. That's not going to get blocked. It's not going to get typically flagged under the domain's younger than 90 days, or so it's important to have extra layers of threat intelligence in front of users browsing, working from home. They're not behind the corporate firewall. They're, you've let them be kind of willy-nilly with your bring your own device. You got to have something like Conceal on those devices so that you can manage it. Is there a rollout plan for, I don't mean to put you on the spot on this one. Is there a rollout plan for tablets and phones, or where are we in that spectrum? Because phones is built for a lot of people.
iPad and iPhones are built. We're waiting. Apple has there's a bug they have with extensions. So we're waiting for that to clear for a wide rollout. But yeah, no, that we hear it all the time. In fact, this is great from a business perspective. Larger enterprises have a lot of managed iPads, right? Mm-hmm. And so for us, this is a key technology add-on that we want to have. And we're so close. As you know, Apple can be a little tough on sometimes to work with on this, but we're driving it as hard as we can. We're hoping we can get this out in a couple months here.
That's great, because that's one of the biggest challenges when I start talking about really getting into the cybersecurity conversations with businesses. I'm like, all right, great. We've got all of this EDR, we've got filtering, we've got threat locker, we've got a great firewall, we've got paperwork, we've got plans, we've got policies. What are you doing for your employees and their phones, or letting access to your infrastructure on mobile devices? And they're like, we don't want to. That's, force our employees to buy a phone. We buy a phone for the employees. We reimburse them. Yeah. That's a messy conversation. I'm like, hey, we got to protect somehow. So, it becomes at least we're going to install this on your phone to protect you, not just the organization. So it becomes an easier sell.
And iPads, executives travel with iPads. iPads are easier, I think, than a phone. It's a little bit easier technically too. Not that big a difference, but those are it's critical. And I think you're exactly right. The policies around them are pretty weak right now.
And service industries lean on those iPads like nobody's business. Electricians and plumbers and people who are doing construction, they're just like, oh, here, swipe here. I'm sending you an invoice. Let me enter your credit card data. There's typically no security, rarely even an MDM on those devices for people that are running around touching people's homes and touching people's Wi-Fi all the time. Who knows what those iPads and devices might be touching?
Even more to the point, those are the industries that tend to be, I would say, not all of them, but cash-rich industries that the threat actors target for ransomware, because they're not venture-backed, they're not fintech that has minimal cash in the balance sheet. These are companies that have tens of millions of dollars that they could afford to pay these out, And so that's why manufacturing gets targeted, right? If folks with those strong balance sheets are who the bad guys go after, and they're the most vulnerable because, as you know, those also tend to be the folks that spend the least on cyber.
Yep. 40% of all targeted attacks are against construction and manufacturing. Like target, not random email, targeted. I want to take over that company because they're used to sending wire transfers. They're used to doing all sorts of things that a normal person doesn't do. So I just need to social engineer you. Like you mentioned, the casino situation last year. I just need to social engineer you. I just need to trick you to change your behavior. And now poof, there goes $1 million wire transfer out the door. Wow. And that's not going to be good for anybody.
Heard so many crazy stories. I mean, it just feels like everyone has a story around this about losing $1 million, or there's one 6 million I heard a couple weeks ago. And it just, this is so devastating for companies. Yeah, I think they've gotten a little bit better about getting them back, but many times it's gone.
Yeah, it can be. And the problem is that the FBI and the other, agencies that work here in America, they're just so overwhelmed with this stuff, right? I work with the FBI on a frequent enough basis, and they tell me, they're like, listen, if it's not over $1 million, we're not even going to drive out. Like maybe we'll take a statement over the phone, we'll take an email. Like we're dealing with $50 million compromises, $100 million compromises, and then when you go to the local, even here in Austin actually has a cybersecurity team. And an incident response team, but even them, it's like a team of 4 people. They can't respond to the whole city, the whole country, or at least the companies around the country that are based here. So it can become a big deal. So on the subject of these things, let's kind of go off script here for a moment.
Yeah,
I'm going to make you the cybersecurity czar of America. Right? Somebody comes to you and says, hey, the new administration needs someone. You've got prior military experience. You know how the chain of command works. We're going to put you in charge. What's the first new rule that you enact as the cybersecurity czar of the United States of America?
Well, I don't know. I'm gonna be cautious on this answer, but I do think it's something that I've actually talked to folks in national security about this a little bit. I think that when you're attacking hospital systems or you're attacking critical infrastructure, where we do have cases now of people losing their life because records have been lost and that sort of thing, I do think that there needs to be options for all aspects of warfare to be applied to cyber. And I'm going to leave my answer at that, but I'm just going to say, you served many years in overseas theaters, that there's a level of deterrence that I think is critical here. And when folks are allowed to get away with these attacks, and it's maybe only a law enforcement action or a slap on the wrist for people that are based overseas, I do feel like we need to be more aggressive, because I don't think that the punishment is severe enough for the acts that they're inflicting. So there's a lot of I'm going to keep that vague, but I just believe that there needs to be a stronger response here, or this is going to continue to get worse. And the facts are bearing it out with the amount of money that it's causing, and the untold effects on people's livelihoods, on people's lives, on their health, is just catastrophic now. So I would say we just need a little more aggressive posture.
That was a great answer, and I agree with a good chunk of that. Right?
Okay.
especially when you have organizations like, I'm not sure if you follow Scam the Scammers or Kit Boga or any of the other big YouTubers that are going out and being like, oh, this hacking organized cartel, if you will, rents the 15 different floors of different multi-story professional office buildings across all of this country, right? When you're finding out that these people have 500 to 600 employees, and one floor is full of people who are doing genuine tech support, and they just literally whisper, hey, you want to come upstairs and make some real money, right? And that certainly can become a an intentional problem. And most people aren't realizing that those same threat, not the threat actors, because the threat actors are playing for real money, but even the scammers are. The first day of scammer school is they teach you about Social Security, and they teach you about the pension system in America for those who have pensions, so they can say, "Hey, you're not stealing from grandma, you're stealing from the U.S. government. Look, everybody in America, when they reach this age, they get a check from the U.S. government. It just changes on how much. Are you getting a check from our government? Is your parents getting a check from our government? No, don't worry about it. You're not really stealing from people. You're stealing from the federal government of the United States of America." So they are planning these attacks and making the U.S. government in some way, shape, or form pay for it. It's just that people are suffering at the same time, regardless of whether we're talking about $1 million hack or $1,000 hack. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. It's just devastating. And it is a business for these folks. But when, when it's organized crime on foreign soil, we have other equities, as you know, that can be applied. And that's where I stand on it. Is we need to apply those more aggressively.
Fantastic. There's a lot to unpack there. That could be its own show.
Well, yeah. Well,
because the cyber war is happening. Like this is not. It's not even up for discussion.
Right.
Nation states are going after nation states, and hacker teams are going after hacker teams. Right. Sometimes hacker teams get into nation state infrastructure. They don't even know what nation state they're in. They're just like, I took it over. Who's here? Who's this? It can be completely ridiculous. But on that subject, which was a great tangent, the great now in charge of the cybersecurity czar of America, waging war, more than the cyber war. So on that subject, what are some other ways that people can follow you and check out more about Conceal?
Conceal.io obviously is our website. We're posting, follow us on LinkedIn. We put out our threat reports every week on LinkedIn. We try and have some other, content, whether that's interviews, webinars, that sort of thing. We want to promote, obviously, our MSP partners and other partners around the globe that we're working with. So I think LinkedIn's always a great way, and most folks are, it's an easy place for people to get access to us. One last plug, if you don't mind, Richard.
Yeah, plug away.
Any client anywhere can get 5 free licenses of Conceal right now. So we offer that up, and you can play around with it and install it on your devices, your client devices. So we have that Conceal community available for all.
We internally in Titanium, I'm not sure if you knew this, we gave us those test licenses, and we then threw like 12 threat feeds at it, and we managed to punch through a couple times, but man, the success rate was astounding, and that when you're only getting like 3 or 4 sites through and we're sending thousands of them, that's a really impressive marker. There's a YouTube video, how many viruses can I throw at Windows Defender to make it break? And it shows him like he has a zip file of 100 viruses, and every virus gets blocked, but when he runs all 100 at the same time, 1 or 3 always get through. Even though Windows Defender is blocking each one individually, it's just too much for Windows Defender to handle. Right. So, when you're like, and that's 97, 98%. When you're hitting 99% plus on every single possible threat feed that you can have crammed down a product, like that's you are in a big giant green flag territory.
Well, I appreciate you all testing extensively. Of course, I want to always be 100%. My head of technology disabuses me of that notion, but we're just know, and for you as a client and for your listeners, we are constantly striving to get better and better every day. We want to make sure that we're providing that, making that correct adjudication every time. If we're unclear, we're putting it in isolation so that can't cause damage to the network, to the endpoint. But appreciate you guys taking the time to test it, and it's we want to keep making you happy and doing great work out there.
There's a lot of cybersecurity woo-woo out there, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of products that are just like, we're just competing with something else. We're racing towards the bottom. Install our free antivirus product so we can sell your browsing history or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it really takes some due diligence to determine what products are actually doing things that you need them to do. And I can firmly and completely say that Conceal is doing what they're saying that they're doing, and I'm happy to put it on my clients' machines.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
All right, I think we've got plenty of stuff for people to talk about and listen.